This passageway clear.
And this side.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Como ustedes pueden ver, se han unido a esta fiesta linda de Se Hace Camino Nueva York varios líderes de nuestra ciudad. Yo voy a decir el nombre de cada uno de ellos y quiero que a todos les demos un aplauso bien fuerte, un aplauso con respeto y dignidad. Entonces, le damos la bienvenida a South Albany, Thank you so much, each one of you. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Ana Maria Archila, and I am one of the co-executive directors of Make the Road New York. We are deeply honored to have you all here with us to talk about the issues that matter to immigrant and working class New Yorkers. The people sitting before you are some of the leaders of Make the Road New York, and today our organization has more than 12,000 dues-paying members from across New York City and Long Island. Every day, we work together to build a New York where workers won't be poor, where families won't lose their home, where students will learn, where LGBTQ people will have equal rights to work and to love, where immigrant families will stay together and our police won't treat us like criminals. And we do it by organizing people in our communities, by promoting policy ideas, and by registering and mobilizing voters of color to the polls. Last year alone, we registered over 12,000 new voters who support our platform. So we are so excited to have all of you here. All of you have been partners in our work. And one of you will most likely be the mayor of our city, which is very exciting. Right? One of them will be the mayor of our city. So, as you can imagine, we have many questions for you. Very important, all of them. But today we will ask you 6 questions. Each candidate will get a chance to answer each question in 90 seconds. And at the end, we will give you a chance to respond, to tell us why you're running for mayor and how you will build the city with respect and dignity for all. We ask you please to respect the time limits because each question is really important and we don't want to run out of time. If you don't respect the time limits, I will do something. Please do so. You will see Karina, the beautiful Karina there, holding a sign to alert you. Your sign is upside down. About the time, she will let you know when you have 30 seconds, and then she will let you know when you need to stop. And I will please ask you to stop. Ahora, compañeros, escúchenme un momento. Yo sé que todos nosotros estamos súper emocionados de este diálogo. Es un diálogo súper importante. Y todos nosotros tenemos opiniones muy fuertes acerca de las soluciones que a nosotros nos parecen que funcionan. Pero les pido que nos ayuden a que el programa siga avanzando. Solo tenemos tiempo limitado con los candidatos. Y también les pido que, como este es un diálogo, a veces tenemos diferencias, ¿verdad?, en los diálogos. Les pido que mantengamos en nuestras reacciones un tono respetuoso. And with that, let's get started. So we have Marta, who will ask a question about how you will prepare our city for immigration reform.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Marta Sánchez. Soy madre de 2 niños que nacieron en este país y hoy tienen 7 y 10 años. Mi esposo y yo hemos vivido en Queens por más de
great to be when we first named the road New York. It was a great turnout, a great organization left. We should be very proud of this afternoon. When I read a question about immigration, I don't talk about it from the perspective of reading a book about it. I was actually an immigrant. I came to this country at the age of 8. I couldn't speak any English. And I know what it's like to walk into a classroom where someone doesn't understand what you're saying. It's pretty traumatic. So we have to make sure that, first of all, we pass the DREAM Act, which is being held up in Washington. And as a city, once that passes, we have to make sure that we provide our immigrants with a path to citizenship by providing English as a second language classes, by providing good training for them, adult education so you can learn English and prepare for citizenship. You know, we used to have adult education programs all over the city where immigrants could go in at night and actually take a course of how to learn English. And we need to expand that citywide. And as someone who came here as an immigrant, I'm going to make sure that we have those services, that we have living wage jobs for many of our new immigrants, and we start them on the path to citizenship by providing the services like English as a second language and adult education.
Thank you. Bill
Buenas tardes, hermanos y hermanas. Okay, this time for sure. Yeah? Okay. Muy importante to make the road
I'm sorry. I'm going to stand behind you. How about that?
You make the road has stood up for immigrants, for let's try again. You stood up for immigrants, you stood up for low-wage workers and parents all over the city. You stood up for young men of color who have been treated unfairly because of stop and frisk. And I say thank you, because your activism is making a huge difference in New York City. When it comes to immigration policy, right now, we should pass a law in Albany to give driver's licenses to undocumented people so they can live a full life in New York City and New York State. We should have, I have proposed a city ID card so people can sign a lease or can get a bank account, the things immigrants need, even if they're not documented. The city should provide an ID card. We need the New York State DREAM Act. All those things would make a huge difference. But as Martha asked, after we get comprehensive immigration reform, then we need to do even more. And I have proposed taking subsidies away from big companies and giving them to CUNY so workers can actually get retraining at CUNY. So adult education can happen at CUNY for everyone. And we need legal services to help protect people's rights even after immigration reform is achieved, to protect people against eviction and discrimination. That's what I would focus on in my administration. I want New York City to lead the way for the rest of the country, to be the most immigrant-friendly place in the United States of America.
Buenas tardes a todos, felicitaciones. Gracias a Hace el Camino por esta oportunidad, por el discurso más importante en la ciudad de Nueva York. Somos los inmigrantes la gente muy importante en Nueva York y en América. This is a chance. This year, the president has promised that we are going to pass immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform that seeks to keep families together and also give people a path towards citizenship. Everybody is proud to be an American. Whether we're citizen or not, we are American. And so we need to have the kinds of resources that we need to succeed. And in the city of New York, I believe that when immigration reform passes, it will be a great thing, not just for immigrants, it will be a great thing for New York. Because we know for hundreds of years, the greatest resources that New York City has been our people, particularly immigrants who come here year in, year out, making a new life for themselves and their families. And so if you look at my office, we have proposed a people's budget that will give tremendous resources, particularly to adult literacy for English classes and job training. That is exactly what we need. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thank you and buenas tardes. And I want to first start by thanking Make the Road, not just for pulling this together, but Marta, on the issue that you raised, we are so grateful of the City Council to Make the Road. Because the only way we were able to pass legislation that is now law, legislation that has prevented hundreds and it'll be eventually thousands of New Yorkers from being wrongfully deported was because of our partnership with Make the Road. So thank you so much. We didn't and we won't. We didn't wait for federal immigration reform. We passed a law that said at the Department of Corrections, we're not going to interact with ICE and allow people to be wrongly deported. And then we passed a law that said we're not going to let the police interact with secure communities and allow people to be wrongly deported. And I think that's helping and helped build the momentum for immigration reform across the country. But we need to do more. We need to have municipal IDs. We need to have driver's licenses for everyone, whether documented or not. We need to expand citizenship now, legal representation programs with CUNY to get more folks good, quality, free legal representation. And immediately, we need to get folks who are in the situation Marta was in, free legal representation. That needs to be a priority in upcoming budgets.
Thank you so much.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias, Ana Marie. Mil gracias por el gran honor de estar con ustedes. It is great to be here this afternoon. Thank you so much. Let me first start off by thanking Ana Marie. Let me also thank Javier. What you have done and what everyone at Make the Road continues to do is to advocate, not just for immigrants, for those who need help with housing, those who need help with immigration situations, those in the LGBT community. Make the Road has become one of the great organizations in the city of New York. But when it comes to the question that has been asked by Marta, I think that number one, we can start first by having the mayor of the city of New York. Immigration reform has not happened in Washington yet. The mayor of the city of New York needs to get to Washington with other mayors and push Congress to make sure that immigration reform moves along with a pathway to citizenship. That's the first thing. Second, I think that as we look at our education system, right now, bilingual education, ESL, is not being provided. We need to work to provide that within our public school system. We need adult education to be able to move that forward. And when it comes to legal services, we need to invest in legal services. It will provide support to new immigrants, but it will also provide support and cut down on homelessness and those being evicted across the city of New York. We need to do all of that. We need to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hola, me llamo Anthony Weiner.
es un problema por negocios, es un problema por todas las personas en Nueva York. Y justicia para todos es la trabajo del alcalde. We have to solve the problem here in New York City so we can show every city, we can show the whole country how we do it. We respect workers, we follow the rules, we don't commit crimes, we educate our kids. That is why we need to fix immigration now. I've been working on this literally since I walked in the doors of Congress 13 years ago. On the Judiciary Committee, I've been working on it with Make the Road. If you give me the chance to be mayor, we will all work on it together. Thank you.
Now we will start with Bill de Blasio, and the next question is by Cheyenne, a young leader of New York, who will ask about the school to prison pipeline.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Smith. I'm 16 years old and I attend the Bushwick School of Social Justice. I'm a part of Make the Road New York and the Urban Youth Collaborative. Schools are supposed to be a place of learning, right? Yes. Right? All right. When I walk in the door to my school, I want to feel safe, happy to be there in a welcoming environment that is ready to support me in getting my education. But when I go to school, I stand in a line to go through metal detectors, yelled at and disrespected by untrained, insensitive, and unprofessional security guards, or SSAs. There are more cops in our school than there are guidance counselors. Is that right? Students lack a quality education because they lack resources, support, and college readiness courses, and important decisions that affect them. On top of that, students of color from low-income communities are criminalized and pushed out of their schools. This is not a recipe for success. Our schools need to be built on a sense of community, with students, teachers, and administrations working to create a positive school environment together. Student-based arrests, summons, and suspensions disproportionately affect youth of color. What is your vision for how to improve school discipline and safety while addressing the huge racial disparities and ensuring all New York City students have access to quality education?
Cheyenne, first I want to thank you for your leadership, and I want to give you the greatest compliment I could give. You remind me of my daughter. Strong-willed and progressive and ready to make change in this world. So thank you, Cheyenne, for that. We have to stop this culture of suspensions. We have it wrong in our school system because young people are suspended for very, very little. They're suspended before other efforts to help them are tried. We end up seeing this cause a huge discrimination against young people of color. The suspensions for Black and Latino students are much greater than for others. So let's be clear. It's a discriminatory system that is unfair to begin with, that sets back children's ability to get educated and sends them on the wrong track. I want to reform it. I agree with the recommendations from Judge Kay, who used to be the head of the highest court in this state, that said, let's change the whole approach, make sure the educators are in charge of the suspension decisions, and that we try every tool to avoid suspension. And we've got lots of tools, counseling and peer intervention, that work well, that can still keep a school safe, but greatly reduce the suspensions that are having a negative effect on our young people. I don't want school to be a place where young people feel they're held down. I want to uplift our young people.
Thank you. And just some indications I just heard from the interpreters that they need you all to slow down the tap. So, to slow down a little bit. So, I don't know, you still have 90 seconds. Yes. Okay, John.
Gracias. Thank you very much, Cheyenne, for your great questions. And we have seen this being too much of a problem in our schools, where students are suspended for such little things, and it's almost always students of color who are being kicked out and suspended from school. We also have huge problems where even in elementary schools, we have 7-year-old children being arrested, handcuffed, brought to the police station. We cannot continue this police state in our school. No más el policía en nuestras escuelas, because we need to restore an educational learning environment. And it's not just about suspensions. It's not just about so many police in our schools. It's about the overall way in which our schools are being run today. They are no longer places of learning. Rather, they're being run by Bloomberg as corporate subsidiaries reporting up to a big corporation. It's all about numbers, test scores, and they feel that there are some students who are not going to do well on tests. They suspend them so that the numbers look better. We cannot have any more of that. We need to restore the learning environment in each and every one of our schools. Our schools are for learning, and that's exactly what we should restore them as. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you very much. You know, this problem of schools over-suspended is an enormous one. And it's one that we have a lot more information about right now because of the Student Safety Act. And why do we have the Student Safety Act, Cheyenne? Because of students like you who would make the roads, came to the city council and did some of the best lobbying. You outdid any of the high-paid lobbyists I've ever seen with the amazing job all of you did. And that law now requires reporting twice a year about what happens in school discipline. And you know what we learned? We learned what we knew, that suspensions were off the charts. And with that information and all of you, we got changes made this year. Changes that I'll build on as mayor. It had been before the Student Safety Act that if you were late for school, one time you could get suspended. Not anymore. It used to be that if you were in kindergarten and a small thing happened, you could get suspended for 10 days or more. Not anymore. Those are the kind of changes we're made, and we'll build on when I'm mayor to make discipline about helping children do better, not kicking them out of school, because if you're not in school, how are you possibly learning? So Cheyenne, thank you and other students for fighting to make schools about learning, not about punishment. And you're making progress already, so be really proud of yourself.
Thank you for taking a leadership role and then highlighting this issue. Because you're right, this is a citywide problem, and it is affecting too many students of color across the city of New York. The first thing that needs to happen is we need to make sure that the final word for arrests and suspensions in schools are the administrators. That's the big thing to begin with. Not school agents and school safety agents, not the police department. They are suspended. Things that I would have been suspended or arrested for when I was in school. For pushing. I went to New York City Public School. For pushing, for shoving, for getting into a fist fight. That was never supposed to happen. So the thing about it is, I agree. We need to make sure first that we involve administrators, school administrators in the decision-making process, making sure they're the ones who make the final decision. Improve training for school safety agents, strengthening the discipline protocol and procedures, having a zero-tolerance policy for bullying in our schools. That is important also. And ensuring that some students, when there's a problem, it isn't about just that student. There are other things that are going on in their households and in their neighborhoods. We need to bring mental health services into the schools. Rather than suspend a student, they get the help and the support for them and for their family that they need. All of those things, and last but not least, making sure that the numbers are transparent so we understand what is happening in our schools and we cut it down. It should not happen, and it is wrong right now. You are right, Cheyenne.
Thank you.
Primero, lo siento, yo hablo mucho rápido, lo siento. Pero seguridad, ¿cómo se dice security? Seguridad. Seguridad en nosotros escuelas es muy importante. Pero por todos los estudiantes. I respect the rights of the individual student who is acting out in the back of the classroom. We can't put that student out on the street. But we also have to respect the rights of the other 20 students who are there to learn, whose parents send them to the classroom to be safe, whose parents want to give the teacher the ability to teach their student. So we have to make sure this isn't a false choice. I want troublesome students out of the classroom so everyone can learn. But I don't want that student discarded. We need to have resources in the schools so when those students leave, they get the care and attention they need. But we cannot let that classroom come to a halt because the teacher can't teach. That teacher has rights. Those students who are not acting out have rights, and we need to honor and respect them as well.
I spent 11 years as a New York City public school teacher, and I spent a couple of years as a high school dean, so I've dealt with this problems. The way to reduce suspensions is to make sure that we apply the proper resources in our school buildings. The class size is manageable, that we have support services. The guidance counselors actually can talk to kids instead of having a caseload of 1,000 students where they actually do paperwork all day. So we need to reduce class size, we need to have guidance counselors who work with kids and other support services, and we also have to make schools more attractive. We need arts programs, music, sports programs, and physical education in our school building to promote a positive environment. And finally, when it comes to education, we have to address early intervention. Many of our young kids, particularly in poor neighborhoods, are coming into our school buildings at the age of 4 or 5, way behind. Because poverty causes stress, stress causes developmental issues. I want to focus on the ages of 0 to 3. When a child is born, we have to start working with them. I want to create a department for early learning, and I want to establish pediatric wellness centers in low-income communities around the city, where doctors, teachers, and parents work together. Because we now know that the first 3 years of a child's life are very important. And it's too late to start at 4 or 5 years of age. We need to focus early on because many of our kids are being referred to special education, and it's very costly and also morally wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Vianney. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we have Jonathan, who is a worker at high-tech car wash and an amazing dinner for workers.
Buenas tardes, compañeros. Mi nombre es Jonathan Ángeles, soy mexicano y tengo 23 años de edad. También soy miembro de Se Hace Camino a Nueva York. Trabajo en high-tech car wash, donde decidimos organizarnos por todas las injusticias que vivíamos mis compañeros y yo. Un salario muy bajo, condiciones difíciles de trabajo por parte del dueño y el manager. En septiembre del año pasado ganamos una elección del sindicato y apenas hace 2 semanas firmamos un contrato. Yo me siento muy orgulloso porque este fue el primer contrato sindical en un car wash en Nueva York. Y me siento feliz porque es la manera de nosotros tener estabilidad en el trabajo y los beneficios que merecemos como trabajadores y que nos traten con respeto y dignidad. Nosotros también somos parte de una campaña más amplia para exigir salarios dignos y mejores condiciones de trabajo para todos los carwacheros de la ciudad de Nueva York. Yo les pregunto, ¿ustedes se comprometen a apoyar el acta de responsabilidad carwachera para asegurar que la ciudad tenga mayor vigilancia de una industria que abusa de trabajadores y también del medio ambiente? ¿Qué harían para promover este tipo de legislación y apoyar a los carwacheros y otros trabajadores de bajos ingresos que quieran organizarse y formar un sindicato?
Gracias, Jonathan, por su pregunta. Gracias por su lucha, por respeto y dignidad por los trabajadores. This is an issue that has been percolating in New York City for a very long time, and what we can do in New York will spread all across America. Low-wage workers have been exploited for too long, and whether they be car wash workers or fast food workers, we we need to make sure that they are able to earn a living so that they can take care of themselves and their families. One of the things that I've been talking about is that the reality is the minimum wage is not earned by part-time teenage workers, but by people who have kids to feed and take care of. Workers like Jonathan, who are often paid too little with no respect and poor working conditions. I support workers in this city and everywhere to have the right to join unions and to organize. I also fully support an increase in the minimum wage for these workers. And minimum wage, not just at $9, no solamente a $9, pero a $11, $11.50, $11.50. Survive in New York City. So let's make sure the workers have the rights and that they also are compensated fairly. Gracias.
Jonathan, muchas gracias. You may have been the first car wash, but now there's been a second one. And that's what your leadership is bringing to the city. And I want to thank you and all the other car wash workers, Make the Road, and also Stu Applebaum, who's with us today, the great leader of RWDSU, who has been helping spearhead this car wash organizing effort across this city. And what you did, now there's a second. There's other car washes that have got not yet unionized, but better pay deals. That's because of everyone's work. And I've been proud when Make the Road and RWDSU have asked me to sit with the owners of car washes and make sure they know that the workers are not alone, that in fact the city government, the city council is watching every move that they are making, and we're going to hold them accountable. That's why we've had hearings on the car wash legislation, why we will have another one, and we will work to find a version of that we can pass and that we can defend in court if we need to. Because make no mistake, when we move these pieces of pro-worker legislation forward, we often end up in court. We're in court right now defending the living wage and the prevailing wage law, and when I'm mayor, we will drop that lawsuit on day one, and we will expand those requirements into every dollar our economic development corporation spends to lift more workers up. But thank you for your bravery.
Thank you so much for your leadership and for the leadership of so many others in the car wash industry who stood up and have led the way across the city of New York. You know, my grandparents came here in 1917 from the Caribbean. They were able to, my grandmother worked cooking and cleaning. My grandfather worked selling insurance. They were able to save up and buy a house in 1939. If it wasn't for that, the Thompson family, my family, wouldn't be here in New York. We wouldn't be in Brooklyn. We are seeing right now families who are here from all over the world aren't able to be able to work and save and be able to buy a home or to be able to bring their families up in New York City. You've helped to lead the way. We have to make sure that we give those in the car wash industry, those in other low-wage industries, the opportunity to unionize. That's the way to move up into the working class and then move to the middle class. We have to do that. The mayor of the city of New York has to stand up and say, in New York City, you will be able to organize, and I will push and make sure that that happens. We need to be able to make sure that you can bring your family up in the city of New York and be able to move up that economic ladder. So it is through legislation, but it's also in leadership. What does the mayor do? Does he stand up and stand with you, or does he stand against you? I want to be a mayor who stands with you. That's the only way that everyone in New York City will be able to move forward together and be able to raise their families in our city.
We are all car washeros because all of us rely upon someone to make the fight to raise all of our standards. You know, Mayor Bloomberg pats himself on the back because we've created many more jobs in recent years. But what type of jobs are we creating in New York? We're creating jobs to even support your family. So that when the car wash workers organize and they demand their rights, it helps the fast food workers organize to demand their rights. It helps the laundry workers organize to demand their rights. It makes it easier for the hotel workers to organize and have their rights. All of us wind up getting lifted above where we are today. We cannot be a city. Only a very poor people struggling to make it. And the one singular thing that has helped more than anything else in the history of the United States of moving people up one leg of the ladder to the next is organizing through a union. Anyone who wants to be mayor has to understand that, has to welcome that, has to encourage it, and has to work to make it happen.
Thank you.
Jonathan, congratulations, and Stuart, congratulations, because this is a rare victory. The union movement across America has been eroding, and to have a victory like this in New York City is a sign, a good sign that we can move forward and create living wage jobs in this town. I'm a member, I still pay my dues to the United Federation of Teachers. I was a teacher for 11 years. My mother, a member of ILGW, was a garment worker. The union movement created the middle class in America, and specifically, and I'm a living example of it, coming here as an immigrant. So this is a great thing that you've accomplished. And let me say to you that I authored the city's first living wage law, which paid workers $12 an hour in certain sectors of the economy that the city let the city contracts out work. That was in 1996. We paid them $12 an hour to help it. Here we are in 2013, debating a $9 an hour minimum wage. It's a tragedy and a travesty. We need to increase the minimum wage. We need to index it to inflation. And under an Albanese administration, you can rest assured that I am committed to creating living wage jobs in this city, because income inequality is out of control, and we know it has to be done. No one who works full time should be mined in poverty. Thank you.
Felicidades a Jonathan y todos sus compañeros por una grande victoria. Jonathan, you should be so proud, because this is the kind of thing that actually creates progress. Now, as public advocate, I have been fighting on behalf of the car wash workers and fighting to make sure that the city government of New York stopped using car washes that were unfair to their workers, like the Lage car wash. It was so important to work to take business away from the companies that were unfair. And this has to be the model going forward. Not only do we need to pass the Car Wash Accountability Act, the next mayor of New York City has to fight side by side by low-wage workers to help them unionize. When I'm mayor, it will be my honor to stand up with workers like Jonathan and help them organize and use the power of the city government to support organizing efforts. It is the right thing to do, and it's the only way we will help families work towards the middle class. So many mayors in the past acted like they had to keep their hands off union organizing in the private sector. Well, those days are over. If we keep our hands off, the middle class will continue to decline. It is the responsibility of mayor, this is my view, as mayor, I will fight to help you organize so families can live decently in this city.
So now we will have Yanei, who is going to read the testimony of Jennifer, who is a member of Make the Road New York's LGBTQ Justice Project, but Jennifer could come at the last minute. So each one of you already has the question. It's the question that we gave you before, that we skipped. Yanei.
Antes que nada, gracias a todos por estar aquí y gracias a los candidatos que están aquí presentes. Mi nombre es Yanei García, soy la organizadora del proyecto de justicia LGBTQ. ¿Dónde está mi gente LGBT? Voy a leer la historia de una de nuestras miembros activas de meses yo estaba depositando dinero en el Western Union en la calle Johnson Boulevard y Corona. Salí del lugar cuando un hombre me comenzó a hablar. Yo lo ignoré y le seguí caminando. Una cuadra más adelante, varios policías encubiertos se bajaron de una van y me arrestaron por supuestos cargos de prostitución. Mi caso no es el único, ni está afilado. Todas las semanas en nuestra organización escuchamos historias de mujeres transgénero, de personas no conformes de género, jóvenes y afroamericanos que son parados y revisados por la policía, simplemente por su color de piel, edad, sexo o identidad de género. O no sabemos, tal vez andan caminando con el novio o con alguna otra persona y por eso es un motivo de la policía que los arresta. Prácticas discriminatorias como el paro y requisito tienen un impacto muy negativo en nuestras comunidades. Muchas veces, como sucedió a mí en la historia de Jennifer, solamente nos daña nuestro récord y la confianza en la policía, porque nos da miedo salir a la calle por ese tipo de perfilación de la policía. También nosotros sentimos respeto y dignidad por eso. Estoy aquí para preguntarles a ustedes, como candidatos a la alcaldía, ¿cuál es su punto de vista sobre el acta Community Safety Act y cómo podemos alcanzar una ciudad segura sin tener que tener miedo de prácticas discriminatorias como el paro y requisito? Y absurdas como también que la policía usa los condones como evidencia. Por favor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that account of what happened is outrageous. And it's just completely unacceptable. And I'd like to say it's isolated, but it's not. A couple of years ago, we had a very similar situation repeatedly as it related to gay men on 8th Avenue in my district in Chelsea. And because other brave individuals came forward, we were able to stop that. That led to a reinstitution of the Police Commissioner's LGBT Advisory Board, which recently led, and Make the Road was part of this, to the patrol guide being rewritten to be more inclusive, more sensitive, and more appropriate on issues of gender expression and gender identity. But more needs to be done. First and foremost, gender needs to be passed by the state legislature, and as mayor, I will go personally to Albany to lobby to get gender passed. But we also in this question was not just what happened to transgender individuals with stop and frisk, which is happening across the city. And I know we can stay the safest big city in America and bring police and communities together. And we do that by reducing stop and frisk, by having stop and frisk only be done when it is constitutionally sound, and we do that by moving forward with the Inspector General bill that will bring the kind of oversight that every other city agency has and every federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Jennifer, what happened to you?
My name is Ken.
What happened was absolutely outrageous and ridiculous. And the first thing that we have to take a look at is what has happened in the city of New York. We have seen in 2011, 700,000 people were stopped and frisked. Last year, 550,000, primarily because of who they were and what they looked like. 90% of those who were stopped were Black, Latino, and innocent. So that is absolutely wrong. We need to change that. We need to make sure that stop and frisk, when it has been misused and abused, that it is changed and changed dramatically. It can't be tied to quotas. It can't be tied to what has happened coming out of Police Plaza. It is one of the reasons that I have said back in 2009 that we need a new police commissioner. We can't keep Ray Kelly as the police commissioner of the the city of New York. We need a new start with a new commissioner. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's important that we enter a new era of community policing. Police on the ground, in the neighborhood, working with residents of the community. That will drive crime down, and that will reduce this ridiculousness when it comes to stop and frisk. I think that, and also, condoms as evidence, that is, and I've seen it, we've heard about it, it needs to end, and end right away. This is wrong. The way stop and frisk has been used is wrong, and we need a new police commissioner for our city of New York. It just needs to end.
When I was in Congress and they tried to pass a law protecting people in the LGBT community, but they left out the T because they wanted to exclude transgender from the law to make it a little easier for people to vote for. I stood up on the floor of Congress and I said that no one is going to get thrown under the bus of the progress we were going to make. We were all going to do it together. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need new laws. We don't need new laws to teach respect. We need a new mayor. We need someone who will hire a police commissioner that will say, if you are a police officer and you are stopping hundreds and hundreds of people and they didn't commit a crime, you didn't find a gun, you didn't find any evidence, you're a bad police officer. And your supervisor who let that happen is a bad sergeant. And the captain that let that happen should not be a captain. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, in my administration, if a police commissioner allows that to keep happening again and again, hundreds of thousands of people are being stopped and no crime has been committed, you are a bad police commissioner and you've got to go. We don't need new laws in the city to teach respect. We just have to have that message coming from on high. That even if you're from a tiny, small community that no one pays any attention to, the police are going to protect you, not harass you.
What happened to you was a disaster. It should never happen in the city. No one should be stopped in violation of the Constitution. We live in the United States of America, and it's clear that the stop and frisk program is creating tension between the police and communities. I want to amend it in a couple of ways. One is to make sure all officers are properly trained on what the approach is, the constitutional approach for stopping someone. And I also want to provide in-service training for them, ongoing, to make sure that that is instilled in their mind. Second thing I want to do is I want to hire 3,800 more officers to restore community policing. When police and communities work together, there's a trust factor there which is important to fighting crime. Thirdly, I think we have to reform our drug laws. We have to stop arresting thousands and thousands of people for marijuana possession. It makes no sense. It's criminalizing mainly young people of color. So we have to change that, and that will bring down stops in this city. Under an Albanese administration, we will keep the city safe, and we will protect civil liberties and throw out ridiculous discriminatory practices like using condoms as evidence. That is nonsense, and I look forward to working with you for a safe city going forward.
Thank you.
Well, I have to be blunt about the differences between all the candidates before you on the question of stop and frisk, because this is one of the areas where there are profound differences. You know, some of the candidates on this stage have changed and watered down their position on issues like the Inspector General and the racial profiling bill. And then there's Speaker Quinn, who I think has presented the greatest inconsistency. She said she wants to change stop and frisk, but she wants to keep Ray Kelly, who is the architect of stop and frisk. And she opposes the racial profiling bill, which is one of the ways we actually can change things in this city. You know, Ray Kelly was asked on national television a few weeks ago if he thought stop and frisk was fair. He actually said African Americans could be stopped even more proportionally in this city. He actually suggested that they were stopping African Americans less than they could. And Speaker Quinn was asked to comment, and she dodged the question. She dodged the question on whether we've gone far enough in the reduction of numbers, which came up at the same time. Look, let's get clear about the fact that you need leadership which is consistent. I know the for Speaker Quinn, it is convenient, politically expedient, to support Ray Kelly for police commissioner. Michael Bloomberg likes that, and Ray Kelly is very, very popular. But if you actually are going to address stop and frisk and the unfairness afflicting our young men of color and the rift between police and community, we need a new commissioner, a strong inspector general, and a racial profiling bill right away.
I want to thank Jennifer, your friend, for the question. This is one of the biggest issues that's facing New York today. And we have to decide how we want to move forward. Stop and frisk, in my opinion, does not work. It splits communities apart from the police. It makes everybody suspicious. It makes it harder for the police to do their job. And therefore, it makes it less safe for everybody. There are other things that we can do where the police work hand in hand with community members and community leaders to identify where the problems are in the community, instead of spreading themselves so far and wide, thinking that everybody is bad, stopping hundreds of thousands of people, and then finding out that actually they can't even arrest 1 in 10 of the people who are there being stopped and frisked. They're stopping in prison. So this is a policy that has to go. And I have to say that, you know, Bill, you're right, we have different positions here. I am the only candidate of all of us here who has made it very clear that under my administration, stop and frisk will end. We don't need to fix it. We don't need to adjust it. We need to end stop and frisk. That's what we need to do. Estoy solamente el candidato que quiere eliminar el stop and frisk. That's what we must do.
Now we have a member of Major of New York, a long-time member of Major of New York, who will talk about housing, María Cortés. Un aplauso para María.
Compañeros, ¿cómo se sienten? Gracias. Y gracias a los candidatos presentes aquí. Mi nombre es María Cortés. Muy buenas tardes. Y soy miembro de Make the Road del Comité de Justicia y Vivienda. He sido inquilina del 870 en Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn, puertorriqueña. Hace 21 años que estoy residiendo en ese apartamento. Los caseros de mi edificio han descuidado el mantenimiento a pesar de ser puntuales en la renta. Había varias malas condiciones que afectaron hasta la salud de mi familia y la mía, la cual nos causaron asistir varias veces a la sala de emergencia. Estos caseros, en vez de arreglar los problemas, han renovado 5 apartamentos, pero solamente después de vaciarlos. A mí también me querían desplazar. Si no hubiese tenido el respaldo de Make the Road New York, no hubiesen renovado el contrato y yo hubiese perdido mi vivienda. Estos problemas son comunes en nuestras comunidades. Malas condiciones de vivienda, la falta de reparaciones necesarias, al mismo tiempo el desplazamiento de inquilinos. En especial las familias de inmigrantes, para que entren personas que paguen una renta más alta. En el 2007 logramos el acta de vivienda segura para asegurar que se hagan las reparaciones en los peores edificios de la ciudad. Estoy agradecida porque mi edificio entró hace 3 años en el programa de embolsamiento alternativo. El dueño y HPD se hicieron varias reparaciones, pero todas no se han cumplido hasta esta fecha. Mi pregunta para ustedes es: ¿apoyan nuestra propuesta para expandir el programa de embolsamiento alternativo para cubrir más edificios y beneficiar a más inquilinos? Al mismo tiempo, corregir los problemas en el programa para hacer más fuerte la ley, más efectivo y asegurar que los caseros no usen el programa de embolsamiento alternativo como pretexto para desplazar a los inquilinos. Gracias.
affirmative enforcement program. It needs to be expanded, it needs to be strengthened, it needs to make sure that landlords who would try and evict tenants who have been there aren't allowed to do that. That they can't displace tenants by using the program to try and use that phony pretext of moving that out. We need to strengthen it. We're seeing displacement, we're seeing gentrification, particularly in neighborhoods that years ago, I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Years ago, people didn't want to live in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now everybody wants to live there. Before, people didn't want to live in Brooklyn. Everybody wants to live in Brooklyn. I live in Harlem. Everybody wants to live in Harlem these days. We need to make sure that those who have been there, those who have made our community stronger, aren't displaced, aren't pushed out. So increasing legislation, making it tougher for landlords to displace our residents, making sure that legally, which is why I talk about increasing legal services also, making sure that people can't be squeezed out of their homes and out of their apartments. So while I don't know the specifics, I would like to see this strengthened so that landlords, unscrupulous landlords, can't push you and so many others out of their apartments and out of their homes. Yes, I want to see that happen.
You know, too often the people that are in homes, that are in disrepair, that are falling apart, are the very same people we spoke about in the first question today. Those that don't have documentation, they're afraid that if they call and make a report, they're going to get in trouble. We have to make it very clear that both our Department of Buildings, HPD, the Housing Authority, everyone understands the first responsibility of government is for people to be safe. Now, I like the alternative program. I like it. It's a good concept. But we have to make sure that we don't have landlords who sign up for the program and then don't follow through. But we have to do something else. It's not enough just to say to an existing landlord, behave yourself. We have to try to make sure we're constantly creating more affordable housing in New York City all around. We have to make sure we're creating more programs for seniors who maybe are living in a bigger apartment than they need so that they can go live with other seniors. We have to make sure that when you're no longer in the working class, that you're ready to climb up to the middle class, that there's housing for you there as well. We hear all the time about multi-million-dollar apartments in Manhattan. That's not the true New York. The true New York is in neighborhoods like this and making sure that middle-class families and those struggling to make it have a safe place to live and a safe place to raise their children.
There is no more pressing issue in New York City than affordable housing. I'm committed to building more. And of course, I want to expand the alternative enforcement program, expand it and enforce it. But let me caution all of you that, you know, elected officials, people running for office, can come in front of crowds like this and make statements that you're going to all cheer for. Consultants tell them what to say about housing, about different issues. What's important is who's funding your campaign, who's contributing to your campaign. And one of the things I've done in this race is I've said I'm not accepting any contributions from developers because I want to be able to build affordable housing. I don't want to be indebted. I don't want to owe favors all over town. I am the only candidate on this stage that is not accepting money from contributors. So I caution from developers. So I caution all of you. I caution all of you to look under the hood. Who's funding these campaigns? Who's supporting you? Because at the end of the day, rhetoric is just rhetoric. What you want is action to follow the money. The policy follow the money. So I once again ask all of you, the organizers, to make sure you check the campaign filings of each of the candidates. That is very important.
Thank you.
Maria, first on the question of the AEP and expanding it, I say, si se puede. Yes, we can. Yes, we must. Yes, we will expand it. You know, as public advocate, I created the Worst Landlords Watch List, which was a tool to help tenants organize in buildings where landlords weren't giving repairs or heat or hot water. I also passed the HEAT Act through the City Council to close loopholes that were allowing landlords to get away with not doing their job. You can't stop these bad landlords without using every tool we have. And government has to be more aggressive. We have to shame bad landlords as we've done with the worst landlords watch list. We have to help empower tenants so they can use the law to strengthen their hand in dealing with landlords. We have to make sure bad landlords sell their buildings to nonprofits or to landlords who will do right by their tenants. But more than that, we need to change our whole approach to affordable housing in this city. If we want people to be able to live in their own neighborhood, working people to be able to stay where they love, we need a strong affordable housing plan. I propose a 200,000 unit plan over the next 10 years, which is something we can achieve by being tough on the real estate industry and demanding the affordable housing we deserve in this city.
The housing problem here in New York City is making it impossible for people to survive in so many different cases. And when we hear of landlords who are targeting tenants and residents, many of whom have families, that is absolutely unacceptable in the city of New York. And what we find that in a lot of these cases, and I see this here in Queens, where I live in so many communities that have high immigrant populations, the landlords know that in many cases the tenants are not going to seek help from anybody because they're immigrants and they fear something might happen to them, so they stay quiet. And then the landlords get their way, and when they evict tenants or they make life miserable for these residents, they get away with it because they think residents are not going to speak up. Well, thank goodness for organizations like Make the Road who have stood up for tenants, and under my administration, we will proactively go out there to see what landlords are treating immigrants and other residents differently just because they think that they can create greater profits by exploiting the residents. It's also not just about the repairs and the current landlords. It is also about building much more affordable housing. We are a growing city. People want to come to New York from everywhere in the world. And we have to start a construction plan that actually will build more affordable houses so we can take care of people here and the people who want to be in New York. Thank you.
Maria, thank you so much for being such a strong tenant leader, and thank you for mentioning the safe housing law and the alternative enforcement code. The safe housing law and AEP are two of the things I am most proud of accomplishing as Speaker of the City Council, and we did that as well as other things together. What has the safe housing law done? Over 5,000 apartments have gone through the safe housing law, and over 67,000 violations have been taken care of. Now, we use taxpayer money to do that, but then we took those landlords to court, and we get over 95% of the taxpayer money back from those landlords. So expanded, it's one of the most effective housing preservation programs in the city of New York, and we have to expand it. But we also have to overhaul the entire housing maintenance code, not just for buildings that are in AEP, and that's what I'm going to do as mayor. I also, as mayor, I want to go with all of you to Albany, because we have to get the Erstat law repealed. We need New York City to have full power over all of our tenant and housing laws. Look what we've done with safe housing. Look what we did with the tenant harassment law. Because of our work together, the council and Make the Road, you can take your landlord to court now when he's suing you. That was never the case before. I think when we have full power over our laws, what we'll do together.
So now we have the final question, and I sense a little bit of a loss of energy. So I will ask each candidate to just answer it in 60 seconds, and I am positive you can do it. Yes, we can. So please help me welcome Maria Elena, who will ask you a question about your position on the redevelopment of the Queens Flushing Meadows Park.
Buenas
thank my colleagues. These are good people, and if I wasn't running, I'd encourage you to vote for one of them. They're all very good progressive people. Here's my thought. First, let's add some places for our children to play soccer. Then let's add some places for our adults to play soccer. And then, if we can, let's add a place for the professionals to play soccer. I want to develop our park. I want us to be able to make good use of it, and I don't think you should only build nice things in Manhattan. I want to build them in Brooklyn, I want to build them in Queens, and I want to build them elsewhere. But the one thing that I know is that we need to make sure that our parkland is protected. I represented a national park that people said was the forgotten park. Now there's a new wildlife center, there are new ice skating rinks, there's a new rock climbing wall, there's a new cricket patch, there's a new green, there's a new, what do you call it when you grow something? There's a new farm. What do you call it when you grow something in the ground? What? There is a new farm there. That's the same kind of ethos I'm going to bring. And please let the record show I do know what things that grow out of the ground are. They're vegetables and fruits. Thank you very much.
Sorry, why don't you take a second to do your closing statement, and we'll ask each of the candidates to do the park question and the closing statement.
Thank you, and I'll do less than 2 minutes. I believe deep in my bones, as someone that grew up in Brooklyn, the middle-class parents who had good jobs, we could afford to live in a reasonably priced home, and I went to public schools my whole life. I want everybody in this city to ask for and get from their mayor the 3 H's. They should be healthy, they should get health care, but also be free from abuse from police officers or anyone else. They should have housing that they can afford, and they should have an honest job making an honest day's wages. This room does not ask for a lot, but what you've asked for is fair, what you've asked for is reasonable. And I don't look like much, but I can take care of myself. I can wage a good fight. And if you make me your mayor, I will fight for you every single day. Muchas gracias.
As someone who spent his entire summer vacations playing ball in Dirt Street Park as an immigrant coming here from Italy, we didn't have much money. The park was our recreation. The park was the summer. I spent all of my time in Dirt Street Park in Brooklyn. So I am against selling off parkland because we never get it back. Parks are important to our communities. They're important to our air quality. We need to restore and properly fund Flushing Meadow Park. I am against projects that they're proposing. I think it's bad for the community. And I'm also, once again, I have to point out, I'm not accepting any money from developers. There's a lot of development money behind those projects. And I want to be able to make decisions on the merits. So, under an Alpe's administration, Flushing Meadow Park is going to be a viable park where you continue to recreate and enjoy the great summer air in New York City.
The closing statements right away, so you can do your closing statement. Sorry, I'm changing the rules on the go.
Okay, we're going into closing. I'm the only person in this race who has a record of independence. I'm not a career politician. I'm not accepting money from lobbyists or developers, and I'm committed to putting the people in charge of City Hall. Let me tell you a bit about my background. I came here as an immigrant at the age of 8. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Brooklyn where my mother raised us on a garment worker's salary. The public schools, the libraries, the sports programs, the City University of New York helped to elevate my family from the working class to the middle class. I'm running for mayor because I want to make those opportunities available to future generations of New Yorkers, and I think it's beginning to slip away. With your help, I think we can change that. You have a real choice in this election. On the one hand, we can select from a group of professional politicians who spend more time bickering and fighting for New Yorkers. Or we can make a clean break. Elect a mayor with a record of independence, who's taught in our classroom and who's raised the wages of workers before. I spent 11 years as a public school teacher, so I understand education from the ground up. I spent 15 years as a reformer in the city council. I authored the city's first living wage law, which impacted 70,000 workers and put $3 billion in their pockets. I spent the last 15 years in the private sector. We have a lot of work to do to fix the city and make it a more affordable place. We have to fix our schools. We have to tackle poverty and income inequality. We have to create jobs that actually pay the bills. But to accomplish this, we need a government that works for its citizens. I want to be a different kind of mayor. I want to make decisions on the merits. I want to tell the truth, even if it's politically risky. I want to give regular New Yorkers a voice in City Hall. That's why I need your help and your votes. Together, we can build a better New York City. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Closing statements.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, thank you, Ana Maria, for being a wonderful moderator. Thank you. Tough but fair. So, on Flushing Meadow Park, I agree with my colleagues. We will not allow any parkland to be lost in this city. It is precious. We have to hold on to it. If there's a way to make sure parkland is exactly replaced one for one, there is no loss of parkland, I consider options. But nothing would even be considered if we're going to lose parkland. The bottom line is that in all three of these projects, we haven't gotten straight answers. The USTA may have done some good things for New York City, but when it comes to the community, it has not treated the community fairly and respectfully. I haven't heard answers from them. I haven't heard answers from soccer on where we're going to get the replacement parkland. And as for Willets Point, where did our affordable housing go? That plan was supposed to be affordable housing, and it has to be about affordable housing again. And that's what I would do as mayor, is reorient Willets Point back to what it was meant to be. These developments cannot be accepted unless they're going to serve the people of communities around, and that means listening to their voices and bringing them into the process of City Hall instead of leaving community residents out, as the Bloomberg administration has done. Now, let me talk about the city as a whole. And I always say we are living a tale of two cities, because the disparities in this city are so profound, whether it's the economic disparities we talked about before, so many people trying to survive on low wages, whether it's the disparities in terms of how different communities are policed. These are not acceptable, and it's not a policy we can live with for the long term. It's not sustainable. The Bloomberg path is something we can't live with for the future. But now let me talk about our schools, because I'm a public school parent. Like so many people in this room, I'm a public school parent for me for the last 14 years. And it's so important to me that we start listening to parents again. As parents, we are the first and last teachers of our children. And our voices need to matter in the schools. If I'm elected by you, Mayor, I'll be the first mayor to serve while having a child in public schools in the history of this city. And that's why I know we have to invest in our schools. I have proposed a plan, I proposed it back in October, to tax the wealthiest New Yorkers. Those who make $500,000 or more, tax them and take the money so we can have full day pre-K for every child in New York City, and after-school seats for every middle school child, because that will change our educational system and start us on a fair road for the future of New York City. With your help, we can do that. Muchas gracias. La lucha continua.
Thank you. Flushing Meadow Park is a very special place to me. This is a place I grew up in. I learned to ride my bike there. I played baseball, a lot of football, meaning soccer, and we have had this gem here in Queens for generations of immigrants to enjoy. Flushing Meadow Park is our park, and we're not going to let anybody take our park away from us. That's the bottom line. And with all these projects that are proposed, they make all sorts of promises, and time again, we see that they break their promises after they take our parkland, after they take our money, after they take our subsidies. So it's kind of difficult to trust these kinds of deals and agreements. Bottom line is we need to keep all of our parkland, because that's what we enjoy, that is what our children have the right to enjoy. Flushing Meadow Park, as well as every other park here in Queens and New York City. And in closing, I just want to say how proud I am to see all of you here today. So they say immigrants don't vote, immigrants don't participate, but we're showing the world that immigrants care, and we're going to be getting involved, and we're going to make an impact in this election. I'm proud to be an immigrant myself. También tengo el orgullo de ser inmigrante. Nací en Taiwán, hecho en Taiwán. And I find it amazing that someone like me could grow up here in Queens, never ever thinking of running for office when I was playing football in Flushing Meadow Park. And to now sit before you as a candidate for mayor of New York City. This is a great city. A city that gives all of us the chance to pursue the American dream. But it's become much, much more difficult in recent years to do that. It's been harder to find work. It's been harder to get decent pay. It's been even harder to make sure that our kids are getting the right education. And my son is 12 years old now. He's also in the public schools. We've got to do so many things to improve this city that we all love, this city that we work so hard to improve. So I say, stand with me. I am proud to have more immigrants involved in my campaign than anybody else. Immigrants who are contributing, immigrants who are signing petitions, immigrants who are volunteering. Maybe that's why they have questions about my fundraising or other things. But I am proud of what we've done in the campaign, in the office. Join me. I need your support. Necesito su apoyo. Elígeme y yo no le fallaré. Gracias.
And all three of these projects are making their way to the City Council now through a full public review process. And as mayor, I'm going to make sure we fully embrace Newark. And we always work with the community board and never cut their voice out of the process. And right now, our leader on the issue of what the right way to go on this is a good friend of Make the Roads, Councilmember Jalissa Ferreras. And she is raising the voice of the community loud and clear at City Hall. And as these projects make their way through, we're going to do everything we can to fight to preserve park space. But whatever happens with these projects, we need to do more to support the parks outside of Lower Manhattan. We need to do more to take the money that entities like the Central Park Conservancy raises and share that money with parks across the city. I know Jalissa also wants there to be a Flushing Meadows Conservancy with community representation, and we need to move forward on that as well. And we need to make sure that whenever there are projects, whether it's city or state land, they have to always be pushed to go through Newark, because that's how the community's voice is heard. And you know, I want to thank everybody tonight, or this afternoon, excuse me, for this forum. Because this forum has been about making sure the community's voice is heard by the candidates running for mayor. And everyone at Make the Road has made sure those voices have been heard in City Hall since I've been speaker. And that's why working together, we passed the Student Safety Act. We passed the Safe Housing Law. We passed the Asthma-Free Housing Act. We came together and passed living and prevailing wage. And when I'm mayor, we will expand on all of those and make sure every dollar our Economic Development Corporation uses has a living wage requirement as part of it, and we will raise the salaries of thousands of workers in the 5 boroughs. There's some tonight this afternoon, I think it's later than I think, some this afternoon have said my positions are convenient. Let me make you this promise. I don't take convenient positions, and I tell the truth whatever rooms I'm in. And that means sometimes taking a position that a group isn't going to like, or another one that group that liked the first position won't like. But what you deserve in as a mayor is what we've done together as speaker. Someone who'll listen, someone who'll fight hard to get consensus, then when we get it, fight even harder to get reform. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but I'm always going to be in the room working with you. I'm always going to be honest, and whether you cheer or boo, we will always be partners moving forward one way or another. Thank you all.
Thank you, Maria Elena, for your question. And as we look at Queens, and particularly as we look at Flushing Meadow Park, we have to look at other deals that have been done, other supposed land swaps that have occurred in the city of New York and what happened there. We looked at the Bronx, and what you saw then is some of the things that were happening in the Bronx. Other parkland was supposed to have been provided. That didn't happen. The people of the Bronx were let down. The people of the Bronx were sold the bill of goods and lied to. And they are still waiting for some of the parkland that they were promised to. We have to make sure that doesn't happen here. One way that we can do this, there is a rush to get these projects moved quickly and have them done before the end of the year under the Bloomberg administration. We need to slow that down. We need to make sure that community residents are involved in the discussion. We need to make sure that the community voice is heard in all of these projects. And we need to make sure that we don't rush to get this done and then the community winds up being lied to, being left out, losing parkland, and having no place to go. So I couldn't agree more. We need to make sure that we are not lied to and that there isn't this rush to get things done by the Bloomberg administration before they leave at the end of this year. Now, just to close, first, let me say, 90 seconds and we're done. 90 seconds and we are done. Let me again thank my friends at Make the Room New York for bringing us together today. Let me thank Javier, let me thank Anna Maria, and you have been probably the toughest timekeeper that we have had so far. You have been very tough. And let me thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. You could have done other things, but you came out to help decide the future of New York City, and that's what you're doing by being here. I mentioned before, I'm the grandson of immigrants who came here over 90 years ago. If my grandparents would have come here, the Thompsons would not be here in New York City. My father and mother wouldn't have been public servants. I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I have. But because they did, I've had many opportunities. I've had the opportunity to serve the city in a number of different ways. That's what all of you are doing. You're here from all over the world. And what you are working to do is to make this a better city. We need to make sure that the next mayor gives you a voice in City Hall. The next mayor of the city of New York stands up and fights and works for you. The next mayor who understands immigration has made New York City stronger and better and more vibrant. You want the same things that everybody else wants. Housing, an education system for your children, safety in your neighborhoods. And the next mayor of the city of New York has to work with you to make sure that that happens. I want to be that mayor. I'm Bill Thompson. Working together, yes, we can do this. Si se puede. Thank you so much.
As you will notice, there are 4 people who stayed all the way through, right? I know everybody's busy. There are 4 people who stayed all the way through, and I want to recognize that because it is a form of respect. I want to say, it's that the other 2 people who left are going to miss the best part, which is what we do, what Make the Road New York does to really live the spirit of our struggle. And so I want to ask all the candidates that are here to join us in front. I want to ask the members who are sitting behind to join us in front. I want to ask everybody to stand up. Put your papers, your phones on the chairs, because todas las personas pónganse de pie, pongan sus manos, tengan sus manos libres, porque vamos más adelante. Ahora vamos a hacer, antes de seguir a la siguiente sección y después al baile, vamos a hacer lo que nosotros siempre hacemos para cerrar nuestras reuniones o animar el espíritu de nuestra lucha. Now we're going to do the unity clap.
tardes. Los diputados se retiran un momento, pero nosotros continuamos. Por favor, les pedimos la debida atención. Gracias por estar acá nuevamente. Mi nombre es Carlos Reyes, soy miembro de Se Hace Camino Nueva York de Long Island.